She grabbed his toolbox and hurled it into the rain. Every wrench, every screwdriver, his entire life scattered across wet pavement like garbage. "You're embarrassing," Claire said, standing in the doorway in her silk robe. "A grown man who smells like grease and can't even pay rent on time. Get out." He picked up his tools in the rain, every single one, without a word. That night, Marcus, a quiet black single dad, 34, fixing generators for a living, had no idea that the woman throwing him out had already spent years circling something that belonged to him. Something worth billions. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Subscribe and hit that bell. You don't want to miss what happens next. The toolbox hit the ground with a sound that Marcus Okafor would never forget. Not the crash itself. He'd dropped tools before in the workshop on concrete in the dark when the power went out, and he was working by feel alone. No, what he'd never forget was the sound it made this time. Because this time, Claire had thrown it. She'd picked up a toolbox that weighed nearly 40 pounds, walked it to the front door of the house he'd been paying half the mortgage on for 6 years, and hurled it down the front steps into the rain like it was a bag of old shoes. "I want you out," she said. "Tonight." Marcus stood at the bottom of the steps, soaked already, rain coming down hard off the roof in sheets. He looked up at her. She stood in the frame of the door. Their door, the one he'd repainted twice, because she kept changing her mind about the color. And she looked at him, the way you look at something you've already decided to throw away. "Claire," his voice was low, "my daughter is asleep upstairs. I know where Amara sleeps. This is still my house. It's both our house. Not anymore." She folded her arms. "I talked to a lawyer, Marcus. I've been talking to a lawyer for 3 months. You just didn't notice because you're always in that shop covered in grease, acting like fixing other people's broken things is some kind of calling." She said the word calling like it was an insult. "You're 34 years old. You don't own anything. You don't have anything. You're not going anywhere." He said nothing. He'd learned over 7 years of marriage that when Claire got to this place, this cold, precise surgical place, words didn't help. They just gave her more material. "I need you out by the time Amara wakes up," she said. "I don't want her seeing this. Seeing what her father standing in the rain because you threw his tools out." Her father failing. Claire said it flat. No emotion, like a diagnosis. "Go stay with one of your friends. Or don't. I don't actually care." She went back inside. The door closed. The lock clicked. Marcus stood there for a long moment, rain running down his neck, soaking through his jacket. He looked at his tools spread across the wet steps in the walkway. His socket set his torque wrench, his old snap-on ratchet that his father had given him when he was 19, and just learning how to be useful with his hands. He picked them up. Every single one, methodically, quietly. He wiped each one on his jacket, which was already wet, so it didn't do much, and placed them back in the box. When everything was inside, he snapped the latches shut, lifted the box, and walked to his truck. He sat in the driver's seat for a while without starting the engine. He didn't cry. He wanted to. He could feel it somewhere behind his sternum, this pressure, this enormous weight, pressing outward from the inside. But he didn't cry. He just sat there with his hands on the steering wheel, rain hammering the roof of the truck, and thought about Amara, 5 years old, asleep in her room with the little nightlight that projected stars on the ceiling. The one he'd bought her because she said she was scared of the dark, but didn't want to be scared anymore. He'd said, "So we'll bring the stars inside," and she'd laughed like it was the funniest, most magical thing anyone had ever said. He started the engine. He slept in the truck that night, parked outside his workshop on the east side of Lagos. Not the most dangerous part of the city, but not the comfortable part either. He'd worked here for 4 years. Okafor Generator Repair, a name he'd put on the sign himself, with stick-on letters from a hardware store, because a painted sign cost more than he could afford at the time. It wasn't much, but it was his. In the morning, he washed up in the workshop bathroom, changed into the spare set of clothes he kept in his locker. He always kept a spare set, old habit, and was under a client's diesel generator by 7:30. His assistant, a 22-year-old named Dio, who talked constantly and ate rice at his workbench, showed up at 8:15. "You look like you slept in a car," Dio said. "Truck," Marcus said from under the generator. "Same thing." "It's not." Dio was quiet for approximately 45 seconds, which was a record. Then, "You okay, boss?" "Hand me the number 8 socket." Dio handed it over. "Claire again." Marcus said nothing. "You know," Dio said, sitting on his stool, opening his rice. "My uncle says a man should never let a woman." Dio. "Yeah." "Socket wrench." "You already have—" "I know. Hand me another one so you have something to do with your hands instead of talking." Dio handed him the wrench and went quiet. Marcus worked. The generator was a big industrial unit, the kind that powered a 3-story office building when the grid went down, which in Lagos was often. He knew these machines the way some men know faces. He could hear a problem before he saw it, could feel in his fingers when a bearing was going wrong weeks before it seized. This one had a fuel injector issue and a cracked exhaust manifold. Maybe 6 hours of work. He settled in. By noon, he'd had 3 calls from Claire about logistics, the car seat, Amara's Thursday pickup, the account for the school fees, all conducted in that same flat business-like tone she'd used on the steps last night. He answered each one the same way, short, clear, no emotion. Whatever she needed about Amara, she'd get it. Everything else they'd sort through lawyers. At 12:40, a letter arrived. Twig. He almost didn't open it. It came in a plain brown envelope, hand-addressed, his name written in careful block letters, the address of the workshop, no return address. He assumed it was a bill, or maybe something from the local business association he'd been ignoring for months. He set it on his workbench and ate lunch first. Dio's aunt had sent food: jollof rice, fried plantain, a piece of chicken that Dio tried to eat before Marcus noticed and failed, and they ate together in the workshop with the big bay door open, watching the street traffic. "You going to open that?" Dio nodded at the envelope. "After." "Could be important. Could be a bill." "Bills don't come hand-addressed." Marcus looked at the envelope. Dio was right about that. He picked it up, turned it over. The handwriting was old-fashioned, precise, deliberate. Each letter formed separately, the way his father used to write. His father, Emmanuel Okafor, had died 14 months ago. A heart attack sudden in his small apartment near the port. Marcus had buried him with the little money he had. He hadn't known much about his father's finances. Emmanuel was a private man, a quiet man, a man who worked the docks for 30 years and never seemed to have much, but also never seemed to want much. Marcus opened the envelope. The letter was 2 pages, handwritten in his father's exact script. "Marcus, if you're reading this, then enough time has passed, and I believe you're ready. I tried to protect you from this world for as long as I could. I see now that protection was also a kind of theft. I stole from you the knowledge of who you are. I was not what I appeared to be. My name is Emmanuel Adewale Okafor. My father, your grandfather, was Nathaniel Okafor, founder of Okoro Holdings. You know of this company, perhaps, though not what it truly means. At the time of my father's death, his estate was divided. My brother Gideon received control of operations. I received a different kind of inheritance, one that I hid because I feared for my life and yours. There is a strong box. The key is in the brass fixture of my workbench under the 3rd bolt from the left. The box is in the Port Authority Storage Unit Bay 17, registered under the name E.A. Daniels. You will know what to do when you open it. But Marcus, be careful. There are people who know this box exists and have been looking for it for years. I do not think they know about you. But when you move, they will learn. You are not who the world has told you you are. Neither was I. With love. Dad. Marcus read it twice. Then he sat down on his work stool, the letter in his hands, and stared at the floor of his workshop. Dio came back from throwing away their lunch containers and looked at him. "Boss,